Okay, YouTube says we're live for another edition of Tech Talks, and we already got a good crowd here. And usually we get another two or three or four or five show up in the next couple minutes. But in the interest of time, we'll get started. And Nick, you still have sharing privileges, right?
Yeah, I do.
So Nick's going to run the show today. I don't know how many of our viewers went through the hybrid teaching training module in FactDev, but that was Nick's build. That's Nick's baby. And it looks awesome. He did some really cool course design and page design tricks and bells and whistles in there that I think make the pages really attractive and very user-friendly and engaging. So we're going to talk about one of those techniques here.
Well, now that you've distracted me with nice compliments, I'll try to get my bearings again. Welcome, everybody. This is kind of I think the funner side of Canvas. And this is where we're going to be talking about ways we can kind of use the rich content editor and the specifically HTML editor within that to kind of build out different interactive elements. And our focus today is going to be on interactive knowledge checks. So basically creating little pop-ups for students to essentially slow down their flow while going through content, provide space for reflection and consolidation, and just make things a little bit more interactive as a whole. So what I did is I'm going to share my screen. So I created a Canvas shell specifically for, sorry, I just saw Ben's comment in the chat. Canvas shell specifically for this demo and this tech talk. So everything I'm going to be doing is going to be based off of using this as a tool. I don't want anybody to think that they have to memorize code or really understand it too deeply to be able to at least get the learning benefit from it. So what we have here is our example. So when I'm talking about these pop-up knowledge checks, you can call them pop-up dialog boxes. You can even call them a multiple choice question within your Canvas page. This is what I'm referring to. So this is just my little example. I've got a title. So if there's a line of them or multiple on a page, student would be able to understand, okay, this is number 1 or number 2 and refer back to it later if needed. And then here's my prompt, the question, scenario, diagram, figure, whatever you want the students to analyze and reflect upon. This is my prompt. Who is the Canvas wizard? And then I've got 2 options. So then say the student picks Patrick. This is what pops up. So now they've had to essentially subscribe to a choice. This is what I think. And then we have, in this case, the incorrect option. We've got a title that says try again. Here's the little explanation. That way it's not just a one and done, but they have to continue to learn a little bit more. And maybe you ask them to go back to a certain section or refer to a passage in their reading. You've got so many great options, just like you would in any other program building a multiple choice question or a knowledge check. But then they can close out and say they want to look at what the correct answer is. Then we can see, oh, it is in fact Jerry. And, he's got all sorts of dark arts that he's associated with. That as a whole is what we're going to try to create today. So like I said, I've made this shell as kind of our toolbox. We're going to pull snippets from it and build one together. So if you are interested, you can see the full code within this. I think that's a little bit more than we need to worry about here. So we're going to hide that. That's why it's hidden at the start. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I've got a page right here. This is blank. I'm going to click edit. You can do this in any Canvas page that you're building. This could be on assignment page, literally anytime you have this rich content editor and this specifically HTML editor at the bottom, you have the opportunity to insert these. So let's say I've got a paragraph of text. This is what they're going to read through before they hit our knowledge check. And then say this is where I want to insert it. So I'll probably give it a title. I'll be extremely boring and plain, and I'll call it knowledge check 1. I'll hit enter. And this is where I'm going to build in those essentially options, right? We had an answer A, we had an answer B. You could have a C, a D, an E. You could go as far as you wanted. Obviously, we don't want to overwhelm our students, but I just want to show you all that you have the option to do as many responses as you see fit. So then I've got the place I want to insert. I'm going to come over to our toolbox, that shell I created. Let's scroll down. This is all the stuff that I'm saying right now, so you don't have to worry about that too much. But we're going to do this in order of the code snippets we see. So this first one, this is going to be our first button. If I scroll back up to our example, we're creating Jerry, that first response. So I'm going to scroll back down. I'm going to copy this, Control C. I'm going to come back over. And now this is where we start getting into the rich content editor, and specifically that HTML editor. So sometimes this can be a little daunting. There's kind of weird terminology that's used when we start talking about this, the coding in here. I'm going to go and look for that knowledge check. Oh, right there. And remember, I hit enter, so I made a space right beneath it. So I'll just copy and paste over that. And there we go. I've got my first little answer right here. Is everybody with me so far? We're only copy and pasting right now. Super easy, right? I'm going to come back. And now I'm going to go down till I see dialog answer A. So this is the second part of this option. We've made our button. That's what that code I just put in is. Now we're going to make the pop-up. So what I'm copying here is what shows up when somebody clicks on that option. Seeing nods, making sense so far. So then let's go back up. And I'm going to paste it right after that snippet I just did. Paste. And I'm going to save, because these won't show up until we jump back to kind of that final version of the page. So remember, there's that paragraph text, insert what you like, images, all that fun stuff. We've gotten to the knowledge check. And then here's that answer I've just done. Click to check, and then I can see I've made that pop up. Currently, we only have just blank text. We'll change that a little bit later once we feel like we've got a good filling of options. So right here, we've got a correct answer. You'll notice that the title here indicates it's correct. And then this background, this is actually Caleb's doing, is a light green. We're using color to signify quickly that the student got it right or wrong, and then they can go into the response and kind of pick it apart.
And if you're feeling more brave with the HTML, you can change and customize that stuff if you want, but this is just kind of the default setup that we are using.
Yeah, and you can be as absolutely bananas as you want. So we're showing you the plain and boring version, and then you can build upon that after we kind of go through what we've done. So we've got our answer, we've got the corresponding pop-up, so the first part of the knowledge check. Now, right here, this is where things start to get different, right? We have to start to signify that there are different answers. You could just do for example, we could change this text to show me the answer or check your answer. So you could have a one and done, some sort of reflection inserted, and then do it that way. But in this case, let's do the more complex and have a multiple choice question. So the next thing that I am copying is for the incorrect answer. Now, the only things that are different with this is that background, and we have a different title. It says try again. So instead of correct, it shows you try again. And then we'll put that, and actually let's do this in order. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's make that button first so that'll show up below. So let's do this. I come back to our HTML editor. I'll do these really quick since it is pretty much just the same. I've got my next answer. And then I get my dialog and I insert that right after the answer. And then if I save, I'll see the finalized version. So here we go. We've got a correct answer and an incorrect answer. When we click them, it looks like they're working. So then all we would need to do if we wanted more incorrect answers or more correct answers is we would copy and put another correct answer in here or an incorrect answer here. And we would just continue that down for as many options as we need. So
but you would need to change the tag for each one, right?
Yep. And we'll talk exactly about that right now. So
sorry, jumping ahead.
No, that's perfect segue, because so what Caleb's referring to is when we look at our code here, we've been copy and pasting, right? And luckily we had, an incorrect answer and a correct answer and an incorrect answer. So there's already a difference between the two. But what we're using to kind of signify what links to what, and when I click on this, what shows up is these IDs. So for this one, ID answer A, this is essentially just my name for what the first thing could be. It could be Q1. It could be knowledge check 1, Q1, if you've got multiple sets. So kind of gives you a lot of options here, but we're just going to use answer A. And then what it's got is this href. So that's a hyperlink reference to dialog answer A. And that's what we pasted right after, right? Dialog answer A. So that's referencing this ID, which is our correct answer, which we would then adjust here. Now the next one, answer B. So it's got a unique ID. In this case, we're just changing the last letter. Then it's got its own dialog box, which is right here. And then that's where we would insert the answer explanation. So if we needed to make another, like Caleb's saying, say we've got 2 incorrect answers and 1 correct answer. So I would take this giant section, which is both the button and our dialog box, and I would throw it at the bottom. Now, the only trouble is you've got the same IDs for everything. So it's essentially just a copy, an exact copy of whatever's up here. So what we need to do is go through and go, okay, well, this is going to be answer C. This is going to be the dialog to answer C. This is going to be the dialog actual box, or I should say this is the reference to dialog box C, and this will be where we put that information. So now we've got 3 options, 3 buttons, all with blank text that we should probably now start to kind of build out a little further. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to move out of the HTML editor, because sometimes it's a lot easier to kind of see what's going on here. And for my
Nick, do you want to stretch out that box so we can see it all at once?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Good call.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
That looks a little nicer.
So remember, we've got our title here, and maybe this is my prompt. Who is the best at running in e-learning? I don't know. I'm totally at a loss for questions.
Who's got the biggest crab shell in e-learning?
Who has, there we go. That's even more confusing, and I like it. So then, now we can kind of put our answers in here. So because this is coded as our correct answer, what I would do is I'd go to my link options. I would just change the text. So we'll say Ben. And then I would come in here and I would change the text to be Ben is the director and therefore is the biggest crab. So that would be the answer that shows up when somebody clicks Ben to check to see if they were in the ballpark. And then I would just do the same for these. So for Caleb, change that text. And then I would come in here and I would go, Caleb is the medium-sized crab. Again. And then I would come in here and lowly Nick is the smallest crab.
Nick gets the cardboard box.
Yep. And obviously this scenario is absurd, but we could also in these little knowledge checks say, maybe point to some sort of reading or material that you've provided them. a look at our past lecture to, clear up, wording aside, you kind of get the idea where it can also be an opportunity to prompt individuals to go search for answers. So now I click save. And when we jump in, it looks like I broke it, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in and let's jump into, oh, links are different now. Okay. So this is not actually that bad. What we might have to do is, let's take a look at our code and see what I ended up breaking. I think it's going to be, we lost our buttons.
So I think what you need to not do is don't do that link options.
Yeah,
format.
I think you're right.
You'll just want to go back into the HTML editor and change the text right in there.
It looks like it also stripped out the ID.
Oh yeah, okay. That's okay. Easily fixed. But when you're building this yourself, don't do that link options in the rich content editor. Just go back into the HTML and change the text itself. And that's okay. This is a good example of what can go wrong and how to fix it.
Yeah, there's always some sort of quirk. But essentially what I've done is I broke the link in this case. What I did was I lost our class, which is what in that code gives it those nice round blue buttons. And then I lost our IDs, which hopefully will tell you exactly where these are going. And yeah, so all of this is funky. So I gotta do some cleaning up.
While you're doing that, Ben had a question in the chat. Can you put links, clickable links inside of those feedback dialog boxes?
That is a good question.
I think the answer is yes, but we could test it out while we're working on this.
Yeah, and I should be able to do that momentarily.
While you're doing that, I can also maybe quickly talk about accessibility here. We have tested this out on both computers and on smartphones, and it works perfectly well on a smartphone, which is important because we know a lot of our students use their phone as their primary Canvas access device. So this works fine for this. It also works pretty well for screen readers, for students that have vision disabilities or they need vision accommodations. What this will do for those students is the dialogues will not hide those answers, but it will make them all visible at once, and then it will read them all aloud in order. So it would say, for the student with a screen reader, it would say, who has the biggest crab shell in e-learning? Ben, correct. Ben is the biggest. Caleb, incorrect. Caleb is the medium. So that's in web design, we call that degrading gracefully. In other words, the button may not function in specific circumstances like a screen reader, but all the content will still be available to them. And it looks like the pop-up box works, or the clickable link works.
Yeah, and so I did it kind of in a hastily way, so it's a little ugly, but that's fine.
Yeah, you could do that. Could be a link back to a PowerPoint or another page in your module, or an external link if you wanted it as like a review resource.
Yeah, exactly. And just for the visual, in the Canvas app, it'll essentially kind of give you a similar view to this, where you've got your answer and then it highlights which one is the correct and incorrect. So like Caleb said, that kind of graceful degradation.
So we've got some good questions in the chat. Are students scored in any way that winds up in the grade book?
So for these, this is specifically going to be outside of the grade book. For individuals that are looking for that, you would probably have to use kind of an outside program. This is for kind of the quick and dirty knowledge check that is super informal and it's purely for the student. Yeah. I wouldn't imagine you also doing too many of these in one page that would kind of give them that full opportunity to earn points.
Yeah. So does not connect to the gradebook. If you want to have a graded or recorded assignment, you would want to use probably either just a quiz or a reflection activity, or there's external tools like H5P that we've explored in the past. And then the other question was, is this recorded in Canvas Analytics? And I believe the answer is no. Well, it will record it as a page view in that they looked at this page, but it's not going to show what they clicked on. So it's purely on the student side of the experience. It's entirely for, like Craig says, it's good for an immediate comprehension check, or like a self-reflection, or a quick little scenario that you wanted to embed in your page. But like Jennifer says, there's no points to earn. This is sort of like an ungrading activity. It's entirely for the student's own interactivity and self-checking, self-reflection.
Yeah, for sure, Ben. And something also to note is, I think I mentioned at the start, but I like this as a way to kind of break up sections. You know, we're not relying on it to hold the majority of content. We're not relying on it to do any heavy lifting, but it's going to be a way to kind of stop somebody, give them some time, they work through it. People like to click buttons. It's in our nature. So we're kind of hacking into that element and just adding another thing to the list or to our tool belt so that we can kind of keep students engaged and keep them working through stuff. At least that's our hope and our intention, right?
It's kind of like when you're doing like a Zoom meeting or a Zoom lecture with your students, and you put discussion questions or poll questions. They're not necessarily meant to be a graded opportunity, but they are a chance for, like you said, to pause, reflect, interact in some way. But this does require putting a certain amount of trust and autonomy back on the student, because we don't have any way of recording this or measuring it, other than possibly asking students for feedback in the future. You know, hey, on last week's module, did you notice those self-checks? Did you try that? What do you think? So that's one way, just to see if they're paying attention and if they have any opinions on it. But built into the system, there's no way to record that.
I'm just catching up on the chat. And Jennifer, when you're talking about a stop movement on that page, I imagine you're talking about kind of a big banner, knowledge check coming up or something like that to kind of drift their eye to it. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, something like that. But then also like within the next week's module, like if you made this something at the end of the week, you can prevent them accessing the next week's module by saying this has to be completed in the previous module before you can open up everything happening in the second module. Like, I forget what that's called. It's like a stop.
Release conditions. Yeah.
There you go.
So unfortunately, this interactive does not connect with release conditions in any way. You couldn't set it as a requirement. So
that sucks.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. If you wanted that level of control, you would probably be better off just using a quiz as a reflection check, because then you can put requirements on it. So if you wanted to go that route, I would go with quizzes. This is a much more informal tool. Yeah, like Ben said, you could put a requirement that they view this page. So that's something, but that wouldn't force them to click on the buttons. So again, we're hoping that using this as part of your existing content is just a way to increase engagement. Obviously, not every student is going to click on it. You are going to have students that skim through the whole thing and move on. And we can't force students to want to learn, right? We can give them opportunities for connection and opportunities for reflection. And then at a certain level, we have to give them the autonomy to make those decisions.
What I like about this, Nick and Caleb, is it gives us the ability to create these things with the tools that we do have. We don't need to interplay Quizlet. You know, we don't have to then go make an account with Quizlet and let them have access to all of our Google accounts and all of our Google email addresses and then get spammed forever. we can just build this in Canvas, which is kind of nice. That's cool.
Yeah.
And
That's what
that takes that page from just reading to interaction and interactivity.
That's what I like about it is there's zero barrier to the student. There's no accounts, there's no external tools, there's no extra internet bandwidth. It's just all there. It has no friction-free assessment.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jared's got his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. I just thought of something. Maybe this would work to try to get at what Jennifer's talking about there. Couldn't you put kind of like Easter eggs in the pop-ups and then ask students to send you that or put that in somewhere else as a verification that they actually interacted with it?
Absolutely. So I had an instructor at my old school who would put code words in their syllabus. So they would, on like page 3 of their syllabus, they'd have a little thing that said, the code word is banana bread. Email me the word banana bread and I'll give you extra credit or something. There was something silly like that. And you could easily do that in this tool as one of the answers. You got the correct answer. The secret code word for this week is banana bread.
Okay, I just want banana bread.
I had banana bread yesterday, so it's on, sorry.
Still on the mind.
Yeah. I'm curious if anybody else has this given you any specific ideas of how you might want to use a technique like this in your class? Because I'm always curious about specific content areas and how this might give you some inspiration for something. And if nobody has that yet and you just need to let it percolate for a while, that's totally fine. But every once in a while, that light bulb comes on and you just want to share it. Craig's got his hand up.
Well, I think it's that psychological principle of intermittent interaction, not something that's continual or constant, but something that is kind of a surprise. And so I think usefulness, I wouldn't put this in all of my Canvas content pages, but maybe be very selective with which pages, I really wanted the student to concentrate on, put that in there and maybe follow up with the reward that Jared is suggesting, with the Easter egg and then move on. So yeah, I think it has good application, but probably if it's limited in its application so that students don't get bored or tired of it. Yeah.
I agree. It's a little spice to add to your course design. I wouldn't oversalt the soup on this.
Yeah, and I would just add though that the kind of cool thing about what Craig's suggesting there is that also gives you an opportunity for some analysis, because if you did it sporadically, you're more likely, or especially if you asked a direct question at the end of the quarter, but you're more likely to get that feedback from students if you did it differently and have them tell you, boy, I wish you'd do more of those knowledge checks. Those were really engaging, or man, those knowledge checks were a drag. That was the only thing I didn't like. I mean, one way or the other, you'd get that feedback.
Yeah. Or if you just got no feedback, then that's also a form of feedback in something like this, right? All right. Well, we're getting close to our half hour here, so I don't want to keep people too long unless there's any other final questions or comments. But Nick, I think that's a super cool technique that you developed for our last quarter's training module. I really like how it turned out, so I'm really happy we can share this with people.
Yeah, no, and I think we'll only get better too, once these kind of little hacks start percolating out, I imagine we'll get more people with even better ideas coming out of the woodwork, right?
Yeah. Well, speaking of other people with great ideas, come to next week's Tech Talk. We have a special guest, Professor Stacy Kautko from SCC, has been doing a pretty cool, very simple, but very effective technique for increasing her office hours utilization, both saving herself scheduling time and greatly increasing her student interaction during office hours. She's calling it Professor Pop-Ups, and we will talk about that next Tuesday. She'll join us and share her strategy and her results and feedback so far. So thank you everybody for attending, and we will see you all later. Okay, YouTube stream is